Hi everyone, this is Mr. Martinez talking about Pablo Picasso. This is for art appreciation class on your cultural appropriation. So anyways, we're going to talk about Pablo Picasso as an artist, why he became the best artist of his time, and how he continues to be an everyday presence in our community, society. If you ask any of your teachers, any adult that pay attention in school, what you'll find out is that everyone knows the name Picasso. They might not know a whole lot about him, but they just know that he is the name, the man, when it comes to art in the art world. Alright, so let's talk about him. Here in this picture you see an old shriveled Picasso. He's from the south of Spain. He was born in the south of Spain, kind of lived there his whole life, with the exception of him living in Paris and a couple other cities throughout his lifetime. But let's talk about his abilities. So early on, Pablo Picasso was showed that he could paint, he could sculpt, he could draw. That wasn't a challenge to him. In fact, people seem to think that he was a prodigy, like a person who was born with this gift of drawing. Kind of like if you think about LeBron James or Michael Jordan being prodigies of their sport. The same thing goes to say about Pablo Picasso when it came to hanging on to holding to a... Hi everyone, this is Mr. Martinez. We're here to talk about Pablo Picasso. Hey everyone, welcome to my lesson on Pablo Picasso. This is for art appreciation at New Horizons. So we needed to start by talking about this old shrivelly man that you see in front of you. This is Pablo Picasso in his later years. But this is the way that most people remember him. They picture this man with like really dark skin and really piercing black eyes. He was born in the south of Spain. The man spoke fluent Spanish, English, and French, and a few other languages, I believe. Let's talk about like his life story and how he kind of became who he became. When we talk about Pablo Picasso, we talk about how early on he was able to draw, paint, sculpt, basically blindfolded because he was so good. They called him a prodigy, meaning that he was born with this spectacular gift. So most people have to work for their talents. Prodigies are just kind of find it naturally. It's the Michael Jordan or LeBron James story. It's the Lionel Messi or there are all sorts of people out there that are just prodigies at what they do. So what we have here is a painting that he did when he was 15 years old. Look at the detail. You can see through the girl's veil. You can see the background patterns on the wall. In fact, like by the time he's 15, like most people can't even draw good stick figures. Nonetheless, something like this. So this shows you how amazing he was. And the man right here that you see with a beard, you'll see him come out in a lot of his paintings. That's because it was Pablo Picasso's cheapest model. His dad posed for a lot of his paintings, his drawings, and that's how he got good. His dad actually taught art. So in a sense, Picasso had a teacher, a professor he could go to if he ever got stuck on a project, I'm sure. But the story goes that at some point Picasso was so good that his dad decided to quit doing his own personal artwork because his son had outperformed him, outdone him in so many ways that he kind of gave up painting and drawing personally. So what do you do when you are the Michael Jordan of art? How do you challenge yourself enough to keep yourself interested? And lastly, do you believe that he might have been noticed at galleries, at art museums and galleries where he wanted to hang his artwork? Well, the answer is no. He actually, when he was around 18, 19 years old, took a trip to Paris, France. That's where you go if you want to be an artist in the early 1900s. So he took a lot of his artwork, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm the man. I'm gonna be famous." We showed up with this artwork that looked a lot like this: a lot of portraits, a lot of faces, a lot of people doing things. But the gallery owners, curators, were unimpressed. They looked at this and they're like, don't care. Reason being is anyone can draw a face, especially if you're surrounded by a bunch of artists. They could all probably duplicate what you've painted. What artists wanted to see was something unique, something that surprised them, that wowed them, and this just wasn't cutting it because they're just faces. I mean, like I said, anyone can paint a face. Give them paint, give them canvas, give them some paintbrushes, and most people could come up with something like this. Little did Picasso know, and he started discovering, is that artists of his time were exploring different concepts, like simplifying and organizing something on a canvas to a bare minimum and still call it art. He called this minimalism, by the way. So you have a painting here by Piet Mondrian here in 1921, and he was basically trying to get away with his bare minimum and still call it art. On the down the road in Germany, people were painting like this. This is called abstract expressionism or German expressionism. So people were painting feelings and emotions, not necessarily painting like Picasso did in this way. You could see the difference, and you could see the feeling, the angst, the depression, the sadness, just by like the strokes of the paint. You could just feel something else. It wasn't just simply a portrait. Other artists that were around that Picasso was really influenced by at some point was this guy, Cézanne. Cézanne painted a lot of like rectangular and flatter shapes in his own particular style, and Picasso really liked how blocky things looked in his painting. And this is I forgot his name. Anyways, this was another artist that Picasso was kind of drawn to. You could see all the different basic shapes within. These artists were influencing each other. This one was influenced by music and simplicity, kind of like Mondrian. And here's the one artist that Picasso really, really envied. His name was Henri Matisse. Matisse basically it felt like he cut out different pieces of paper and glued them together to get an image. Definitely flattening things out. Matisse was inspired by the people of the Pacific Islands. He hung out in the islands a lot, and he really liked the patterns on their dresses and in their fabric. And so he kind of was inspired by that. So notice how people were inspired by other people that were inspired by certain things in life. That's just the way art goes. And everything that we do, from the cars we drive that are inspired by Japanese cars, that are inspired by birds, to the clothes we wear and how it's inspired by former cultures. Speaking of former cultures, so Picasso, struggling and finding his own style, on a trip through the Louvre at some point discovered African art. And I think in kind of like doing the Matisse thing, where Matisse was inspired by some Tahitian, so from people from Tahiti. I think Picasso was looking in history, or at least in a different part of the world to be inspired, and he saw these rectangular geometric shapes within the African mask and the African sculptures that he decided to start incorporating it into his artwork himself. Again, people weren't looking for realistic anymore. They were looking for something a little bit more unique, something that they had never seen before, and Picasso decided to experiment with this. At some point, all of those basic shapes kind of became this. Notice the simplicity, notice the geometric shapes. This is what Picasso at some point ended up developing. This girl right here is called the Daydreamer. But before that, you could see little experimentation. This boy, you could see that his eye is a little lower than it should. So that's Picasso kind of playing around with perspective and just kind of playing around with what shouldn't happen within a picture. Here you could see him simplifying things, just kind of sketching things out. Still showing a lot of skill in drawing the faces and figures and stuff. Here you have, just some blockiness. And this right here, this style kind of became really famous, really popular by other artists in Mexico called the muralistas. The muralists were Diego Rivera, David Siqueiros, and Orozco. But anyways, you could see Picasso just kind of goofing around here. And you could see it here as well. There's just a little bit more rectangularness before he gets to his famous style. And you'll see that soon. Here Picasso was playing not necessarily with the images. Yeah, they're stretched out and a little bit more simple, but he's also in a depressed state here. Picasso was a ladies' man, but he'd always get his heart broken. Here he is kind of taking it out on canvas by painting things blue from being depressed. You can see it here too. Notice how even these three people, even though they're apart together. You know, you could feel they're cold. You can feel maybe what happens when people are depressed, which is they kind of drift apart from one another from the economic stress. Here you could see Picasso kind of getting back in love. Maybe he had a baby here at this point, or maybe he just found a new woman, but you could feel the warmth within the painting. Still not entirely realistic, and notice how he's playing around with geometric shapes. Pretty soon thereafter, he discovered that he could really abstract things, meaning take away the realness of the real qualities of a human or an animal, and really have fun with it. But it takes, you know how hard it is. If you can draw something good, it's hard to draw something bad. So Picasso did that exact thing. Here you have a picture of, let me shrink it a little bit so it's a little better quality. Here you have the Mademoiselles of Avignon, one of his most famous paintings, because it kind of gave him the open door to become a famous and known artist. So what made this painting kind of unique was that he painted these girls like a normal face. This one's kind of halfway there, and then these girls in African face. Who knows why? I have my theories. One theory could be that these girls were more natural and these girls actually wore like makeup, so maybe he substituted makeup with African masks. Another possibility is that these girls might have just been less attractive, or maybe they felt more less attractive than the other two, and so he kind of wanted to do something in regards to that, just kind of more of a symbol or a metaphor than a real life thing. Alright, so Picasso kind of developed this what they ended up naming Cubist style. Cubist as in the shape of a cube. And so you can see a lot of basic geometric shapes. One indicative style of his was, you see how this girl here is looking out that way, right? You shouldn't be able to see the left side of her face, but Picasso, tapping into what a little kid would do, he's actually drawing more than you should see. And that happens all the time. I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but there are times when like someone draws a soda can, right? So they will draw, let me try to draw for you. They'll draw the top. They'll draw the side. They'll draw the other side. Everything's going great. It's going great. But then all of a sudden they draw this for the bottom and you're like, something looks wrong. You know, that's Cubism right there. In a sense, Cubism is showing too many sides. The other mistake people always do is draw a flat line. Like, that is also not correct, by the way. If you wanted to draw this correctly, you would want to draw... Let's see if I can do this. I don't know how to control this shape, actually. Never mind. Anyways, it would curve downwards like this. So Cubist is drawing something, essentially drawing too many angles of something. Alright, and here you have Picasso's most famous work. This one's called Guernica, and it depicts just the horrific result of a bombardment of, I think, the Spanish regime bombarding the city of Guernica when Picasso was small. So he tried to capture the chaos, the death, the destruction, and this painting has been shown everywhere, all over the world. People talk about it in the art world and not. Sometimes when people are referring to war and death, they talk about this painting. It has a lot of hidden symbolism, too much to talk about right now, but really, if you stood in front of this thing, you'd only be about this tall. You know, it's a really big painting, and you can study it and look at it pretty deeply and forever and ever. But anyways, some of the most definitive or finest features are what make this painting really interesting. Believe it or not, it took Picasso a really long time to paint this. He sketched it out a million times. He drew it out a million times until he was happy with his composition, and then he painted and painted until it looked like this. I think that's